Hello everybody and welcome to this, my first of 3 videos on the Nikon D3100, an empirically attractive camera. Now that this is more than a decade old, it's still a very, very good looking DSLR. The Nikon D3100 is an interchangeable lens DSLR, which basically means it's a digital camera that has a single lens on it, that's the SL, and that the light from passing through the lens goes to a mirror inside the camera, which you can see right there. The light then bounces up to either a pentamirror or a pentaprism system in the housing up here. I forget exactly which right now. I think that might be in the notes. Anyway, and then goes to your eyepiece in the back of the camera here. And then the interchangeable lens means that lenses can be taken off the camera and a different one can be put on at any time when you're not taking a photo without affecting your images. This has an APS-C format 14.2 megapixel sensor. It uses a 420 pixel red, green, blue 3D color matrix meter that uses matrix, center weighted 75-25, and 2.5% autofocus point linked spot meter modes. What do those mean? Okay. 3D color matrix means that the meter that's built into the camera uses distance information from the lens as well as color, brightness, and similar information from the scene to calculate a proper meter exposure accounting for lighting conditions and distance to the subject from the camera. That's matrix metering mode. Center weighted 75-25 means that if you imagine that what you're looking at right now is what this camera is seeing, then an area in the center, about like this, is going to represent 75% of the meter reading, and then everything outside of it will represent about 25% of the meter reading. And then 2.5% autofocus point linked spot metering means that if you have an autofocus point, and it meters right here, say right here where it's silver and bright, okay? Then that's 100% of your meter reading. Now your autofocus shifts over here to the lens, and the focus is here. But this is dark, you're gonna have a much different meter reading. But that spot point is now going to be 100% of the meter reading. So that third meter mode is a really good one for using autofocus and tracking subjects because 100% of your meter reading will be off of your subject. So if you want to meter for your subject's face, let's say, then that's a good metering mode to use. The camera has shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/4000th N bulb with a 3 frame per second burst rate. The viewfinder magnification is 0.8x with 95% frame coverage. Okay, what does that mean? What you see in the viewfinder is going to be 80% of the size of what's passing through the lens and reaching your sensor. That's the 0.8x. The 95% means that if you imagine that what you're seeing right now is what will be on the sensor, then 2.5% roughly on each side, as well as the top and bottom, will reach your sensor but not be in the eyepiece. And that means that when you get your images back, you have a little bit of room to crop if something was slightly askew. The ISO range is 100 to 3200 and can be expanded to 12,800. Now, given that this camera is from 2010, I think it is, I would not recommend pushing this too far past 400 because the amount of digital noise that it's going to introduce is going to be intolerable. The flash sync speed on this camera is 1/200th of a second and slower, and in the second video we'll talk about why that is and how that works. And this is capable of recording video at 1080p. The target market for the Nikon D3100 was the entry-level market. Now we know that because it's a 3000 tier camera. Nikon's entry-level tier for the APS-C, for the DSLR era was 3000. That was how they indicated their entry-level cameras. Honestly, both at the time that this was new and today when you buy these on the used market, they are a great value for the money because they're kind of a sleeper camera. A lot of people don't go after these. They're less expensive than many other cameras, but they are still very capable. These were made by Nikon in Thailand from 2010 until 2012. It was preceded by the Nikon D3000. It was a bit of a step up from that, and it was followed, after it was discontinued, by the Nikon D3200. Now, if you have your D3100, we're going to do as we do and go over what all of the features on the camera are. In the second video, we'll talk about how to use everything except the menu system. And in the third video, we'll go through every item in the menu system, talk about what it does and how to use it, how all those things affect your photography. But for now, on the top of the camera, these silver straps over here are your strap lugs. This is where you would connect a camera strap to your camera. This little symbol right here is your digital sensor plane indicator. This lets you know where the digital sensor is if you have to do manual exposure calculations for things like high magnification microscopy. This is the flash hot shoe up here on the top. Wow, it feels like this has never been taken out. Holy cow. Okay. Here's your flash hot shoe, and you can see the pins that allow the flash to be triggered and then to communicate with the camera. Pop-up flash right here. This is your mode dial index, and this is your mode dial. There's lots of different things on here. We'll talk about what each of them is in the second video. Over here we have this switch, which is your drive mode selector switch. So whereas this affects your shooting mode, this affects your capture mode. And these are your 4 options for how you capture: single shot, continuous, multiple exposure, and that looks like bracketing. Oh, that Q might be a quick guide access. We'll figure that out as we go through it. It's been about a year since I wrote this script, so I'm a bit rusty on this camera. Anyway, info button, exposure compensation button. This is the index for your power button, which is here, off and on, and you just switch it on and off like that. And then your shutter release button is right here. On the camera's front, we have a few different things. We have your autofocus assist light right here. This will turn on if there's not enough light to help your camera achieve autofocus confirmation. This is your lens mount button, or lens mount ring. This is what we'll actually mount lenses to. This is your lens mounting index, and this is how you align your lens to mount it. This is your lens mount release button, and you just push this down, and we'll see this in the second video, to remove a lens. There's the function button right here on the side. And then here is your flash release button, and you push this when the power's on to release the pop-up flash. And then you have a microphone right there. And then here is a confirmation pin that helps the camera confirm some information about your lens. The camera sides have a few different things. Underneath this rubber cover we have some ports. We have a GPS connector port, which I think is that, one on the top. Then we have a mini USB port. Now this is a USB 2.0 port. This is an HDMI port, and this is an analog AV out port. So these will allow you to connect your camera to a monitor of some kind, either to display a slideshow of the images on your camera or possibly to use it as a webcam. If the latter is possible, I've not done it myself and can't speak to it. The USB port would allow you to transfer data to and from your computer. However, USB 2 is slow. So if you were just to take the SD card out of your camera, pop it into your computer, you would transfer the files significantly faster. And then the GPS port right up here on the top is for connecting an optional GPS accessory, which I don't have, so I'm not going to be able to demonstrate. There's not a whole lot to see on the other side. Push this open to get to the SD card port, and this is the SD card port. Now on the camera's back, we have a good number of buttons back here. We have here the viewfinder first up. This little dial next to it is your diopter adjuster. So if you have a weak glasses prescription, I think up to 1.5 in either direction, you can adjust this diopter so you don't need to use your glasses with the eyepiece. Up here is your auto exposure lock, auto focus lock button. We'll talk more about this in video 3. Command dial right here. We have the play button, menu button. This is the thumbnail and playback zoom out button. This is the playback zoom in button. And then this bottom one here is the information edit button, LCD screen. Over here we have the live view switch, just like that, and the movie record button. So the orange dot in the middle is the movie record button, and then the switch around it is the live view switch. Cross pad, OK button, delete button, access lamp for when the SD card's being written to, and your speaker for when you play video back from the camera. On the bottom we have a handful of things. We have the tripod socket here, the serial number, the maker, and the registration information, and then this is the battery chamber right here where we put our batteries, and I'll show you how to change batteries in this camera in video 2. So before we move on to the next video, there are a few things not to do with your camera. The first one is not to touch the shutter because you can cause it to brick, so don't stick your finger into the mirror housing and mess with the shutter. Also, don't touch the mirror or the sensor because your finger oils can be very hard to clean off of those and will almost certainly affect your camera's performance. Don't leave this in your car because heat can damage the mechanical components in this, and also extreme heat and extreme cold can affect the plastic components of the body, which can ruin your camera. Don't let it get wet. It's not weather sealed, and water can cause this to short out. And also don't store this in a plastic bag or box unless you have a really good rechargeable desiccant pack that you keep recharged. Plastic is moisture permeable, and once moisture gets through that plastic container, it will find the optics in your camera system up here or in your lens, and it can cause fungus to grow, which can ruin your image quality. Just remember that your Nikon D3100 is a precision tool that should be handled with care and respect, and as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that's it for video 1. Video 2, we're going to talk about how to use basically everything except the menus. In video 3, we'll talk about the menus. I'll see you in video 2.